So let's talk about that, about the Bitcoin Strategic Reserve. What format do you think it's going to be? Because we saw some noise on the tape today that it might not just be Bitcoin, it might be other US crypto assets, XRP or whatever it may be, Solana. What's your thought on all of this? Or is the US going to be openly buying crypto? Or is it going to be stuff that they've seized and ongoing seizure from criminal stuff? What do you think?
The U.S. does own 1% of all the world's Bitcoins already. And we actually participated in the first U.S. Marshal Service auction in 2014 or whenever that was, which is really cool to see the U.S. Marshal Service star on the Bitcoin page, So this is just my own professional hunches, but I think what will happen is the U.S. will do a strategic reserve, but just Bitcoin. The analog would be old school gold, Fort Knox. We have an enormous amount of gold stored as a currency reserve. We don't have palladium or silver or anything else, right? So it's easy to get one very well-known thing that has 60-something% market share through. So if I were a betting man, I would say it's just a Bitcoin strategic reserve, not kind of blockchain generally. And there's actually 3 different ways the president could, or the United States could acquire new Bitcoins. The first one is the president could decide to direct the U.S. Marshal Service to stop selling the Bitcoins that the U.S. has seized from criminals. That is about $14 billion of crypto. And for comparison, we have 650 billion of old school gold. So, it's a pretty small amount relative to other things. There is a old thing called the Exchange Stabilization Fund, which allows the president, by executive order, to stabilize currencies, and no one's tested whether Bitcoin's like a currency or not a currency in that definition, but it probably is. So the president could do some of that. And then Congress, I think, would have to pass any legislation to buy like a significant amount, like we really wanted to do. Sometimes people talk about buying 1 million Bitcoins or whatever. That would take Congress, but there's been a huge swing in Congress too. So it's not unthinkable. Obviously prior to this election, that would have been unthinkable. But from what tallies I've seen, the majority of the people in the House, 270 or so, support crypto, and in the Senate, it's probably a lot less, maybe 20 or 25. So it's definitely something that could happen. But the point being, there's 3 different ways that Bitcoin could end up staying on or getting bought by the U.S. government. And I think at least 1 or 2 of those will happen, and maybe all 3.
And then that begs the question of who next. We know the Middle East is doing it, whether it's via their family offices, but maybe not directly in the sovereign wealth funds. It makes total sense for them because they want to be part of this entire thing. So what do you think? Middle East, next major player?
Yeah, I think you're spot on. I think it's very sensible that the U.S. save in something other than just gold. Gold's been great for 5,000 years, but it's past its sell-by date.
15 U.S. states are boldly integrating Bitcoin into their economic strategies. This marks a thrilling transformation, as governments are shifting Bitcoin from mere speculative interest to a pivotal role in their financial playbooks. Leading this groundbreaking movement is Arizona, and the story doesn't stop there. This is just the beginning of an unfolding narrative. Stay tuned as we explore the far-reaching implications of this unprecedented embrace of cryptocurrency. Welcome back to Investocracy Crypto.
Digital gold's a great thing, so I think the U.S. will do it. And then once the U.S. does it, you're right, there are all kinds of both strategic alliances and competitive dynamics out there. And that's the thing I think people forget is it does seem likely that places like the Gulf that want to stay aligned with the United States will replicate a strategic reserve. That seems to make sense. But equally, I think the countries that view themselves as adversarial to the United States would want to hedge, China being an obvious one, but there's a lot of countries out there, they're certainly not fully aligned with the United States, and would want to at least have some of their savings or FX reserves in a currency that's independent of, whatever the U.S. Treasury Secretary wants to do. So I think you're going to see it from both sides, the U.S. and people that want to be aligned with it, and then people that are worried about U.S. hegemony in the financial system.
Yeah, I mean, it was one of the most, I think you wrote about this as well, and I'm sure we spoke about it. One of the biggest mistakes I think the US made was the seizing of the Russian private assets and then the seizing of the reserves, essentially making them worthless. Because that sent a signal to everybody that US money is not good.
Well, it certainly sends a signal that you don't have all of your savings in something that somebody could seize. And so, I think on the margin, that's going to, encourage countries to think about saving in a stateless currency, right? Like that's what Bitcoin is. It's a separation of money and state, right? So it's a currency, does everything other currencies do, but it's not controlled by any one nation.
The financial landscape is shifting as Bitcoin transitions from being labeled the digital Wild West to a strategic asset embraced by state governments that once viewed it as risky. This evolution is fascinating, with Bitcoin gaining traction as a means for states like Arizona to enhance their financial resilience.
What are you seeing today that you didn't think you'd be seeing 10, 12 years ago when you started looking at this? I mean, are you not thinking it's slightly la-la land now? We've got, a whole administration that's entirely behind it, holding crypto balls. And, did you think we'd get here?
That is a good question. I love that. Just thinking back to the earliest days.
What were you thinking the world would be like versus what it is like?
Yeah, you're right. And so there's a lot of things that we thought would happen overnight that, haven't happened even in 10 years and all that. I would say that the nominees for Trump's cabinet and all of his picks from the vice president down, his special advisors like Doge, they seem literally universally very pro-crypto. I mean, I'm sure there's one or two out there that aren't, but like every time I hear a new name, it's somebody that, massive owner of crypto, super positive about crypto. So that really is pretty wild, right?
And that you and I are talking about a strategic Bitcoin reserve. I mean, this is like...
I agree that the change is pretty stark because President Trump did go pro-crypto in early May. So if we were sitting around in April of last year and said all that was going to happen, that you would not have gotten many believers. So that I would have to say is the biggest surprise, the biggest change. The other thing that I think is not yet thought enough about is the change in the dynamics in Congress, right? So for a long time, it was okay to be just a complete reactionary nut of anti-crypto person in Congress, right? You could just say all the old, there's, bad things happening on, Bitcoin or whatever, all that kind of old crazy stuff. There's bad things happening with the US dollar, the SWIFT, cash, there are bad people and they sometimes use all these different payment systems. So, there were a lot of negative people and they really influenced policy. In the midterm elections, the crypto super PACs went 34-4, but no one seemed to notice. It just kind of, they did a good job, but it kind of went below the radar screen. Maybe because no senators, were up. But this time, you had a handful of anti-crypto senators get defeated. And the crypto PACs, I think, went 54-4 this time, right? And invested, whatever you want to call it, $200 million in the election cycle. When you go 54-4, people notice it, right? And so my kind of unconsensus observation would be, I think you've heard the last anti-crypto stuff out of Congress forever, right? Like, who's the no voter out there? Like, who's the constituent that's like, if my senator goes pro crypto, I'm voting for the other guy. Like, there's nobody out there like that, right?
With a fixed supply of 21 million coins, Bitcoin offers protection against inflation, unlike fiat currencies. Central banks can print money freely, but Bitcoin's scarcity ensures its status as a reliable hedge. Recently, Dennis Porter from the Satoshi Action Fund announced Arizona's leading role with the Strategic Bitcoin Reserve. But before going any further, if you made it this far into the video, thank you. These videos take a lot of effort and time to make, so if you enjoyed them, please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. This goes a long way in helping us grow. That said, back to the video.
I think I might have orange-pilled Scott Bessent. He came to my house in Spain for the Global Macro Investor Roundtable. I think Dan Tapiero was there. a bunch of other people that we know. And he came for the roundtable because he was a Global Macro Investor subscriber when he was at Soros. And that's when I think Emil Woods first pitched Bitcoin.
That's great. That is great.
So maybe
Yeah.
I orange pilled Scott back in the day.
Oh, that's great.
So final question for you. Why do you still do what you do? Why do you not become Wences and just disappear? What motivates Dan to be at work, building Pantera, doing all this stuff, when really you could just disappear quietly? You won the game. You won the greatest macro trade of all time. Wentz may be one of the greatest macro trades of all time, but you were up there with it. So why?
Oh, so I thought about this early in the game, and I still believe it. Is that you and I have been investing money, managing funds and things, and yeah, we probably help some pension plan give another basis point to their beneficiaries, right? Trade dollar yen and all this stuff. It's been good. We've been successful at it, but in the end, does it really do much, right?
As states like Arizona increasingly adopt Bitcoin, it becomes evident that this movement signifies more than a transient trend. It embodies a strategic paradigm shift aimed at fortifying economies amidst global volatility. As states blaze a new trail with Bitcoin as their compass, how do you perceive the future of your own investments? Share your thoughts. And finally, if you would like to know more about cryptocurrencies or specifically Bitcoin, go ahead and click on the next video on your screen. See you there.